Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the time to join us today for the Connected Accounting and ERP Software webinar series. My name is Scott Archer and I'll be doing the presentation this afternoon. Today's webinar is going to focus on managing inventory in your business with the Connected Accounting and ERP software. The agenda or the format that we're going to use today is we're going to talk about some of the key challenges a company that is looking to expand their inventory or sharpen their inventory, if you will, may look at Connected for. What types of companies are using Connected with their inventory control specifically? We're going to do a feature review. We're going to talk about some different aspects and really focus the main part of this webinar on showing you specifically how the Connected software operates. And we're going to review a few different things such as setting up inventory, pricing levels, using lot and serial numbers, etc. And then we're going to answer questions at the end. Just a little note, this is a webinar that's going to be really focused on a user that has a little bit of knowledge of Connected and wants to learn more about the inventory. So we're going to focus on that stuff versus the general use and navigation of Connected. It's going to be inventory centric. So some of the key business challenges that companies may face, whether they're looking at Connected or they're using Connected and want to use it in more detail, these are some of the things that when new customers come to us, these are the reasons that they're coming to us. And looking to use our software. The first one being costing, the need for FIFO and or specific costing. Traceability, this is a big one these days and it just keeps getting more and more so with more regulations from different agencies. And that is the need to control inventory by lot and or serial number. And the word traceability is trace everywhere it has been and who's received it or where you manufactured it, etc. Manufacturer precision, this is a big one. And this is something where we see businesses that really want to reflect reality in their manufacture process with actual quantities or what actually happened, whether it's a tangible or non-tangible item. And this is something that Connected does very well for small to mid-sized businesses without using a bloated software model. So it allows manufacturer to be really reflected accurately, maintaining some simplicity, if you will. And we're going to do a lot of talking about that later in the product demonstration. And another key area is reporting. So easy access to histories, item sales histories, purchase histories, consumption, lot serial number histories. Those types of things are very important. So we're going to move to the inventory feature overview. So we're basically going to kind of cut to the chase here. But just before we do that, some of the key businesses that are business models that are using Connected are distributors, manufacturers, and then within those broad sort of categories, you can be more specific, like a company that's producing medical or food supplies, or a company that's importing or exporting inventory. Most commonly in North America, we see it's an import of inventory where they need landed cost calculations depending on their currency situation. So that sort of thing. So those are some of the key types of companies, and Connected can fit many more, but those are some areas that come up quite often. So I'm going to switch to the Connected software and get right to the product overview. So we can now see the Connected login screen. I'm going to log in and open my sample data. The navigator screen is already on the inventory control tab because that's where we're going to start. So let's basically start the walkthrough. So we're going to open up the inventory items screen. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the types of inventory in Connected. So to do this, I'm just going to click add. And when you add an item in Connected, you will get a screen that will tell you the three types of items that there are. So the first one is an inventory item. An inventory item is something that is a tangible good that you track on-hand quantities for. It has a cost. It can be bought, it can be sold, it can be used as a component in manufacturing. The key element here is that it's controlled. In other words, you track and control the quantities of the product. A service item is a non-tangible product that we don't track on-hand quantities for. It could be a service charge, or it could be an indirect or a direct cost of manufacturing, where you might allocate a labor unit or an overhead unit to increase the cost of a product as you build it. So that's what a service item is. And then the last one is a manufactured item or a master item. Now, a master item is exactly the same as an inventory item, with the exception that you can attach a BOM or a bill of materials to that item. So just like inventory, that item can be tracked for on-hand quantities, costs, quantities, but you can attach a bill of materials and assign components to that item. So basically, for the example I'm going to do, I'm going to proceed and add a new item, and I'm going to use a manufactured item because it's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So the master item, the first field that we get to is the item code. I'm just going to use item 1 as my code, and we'll call it sample manufactured item. I'm going to control this item by lot number. This item is not going to have a primary vendor or a vendor part number because I'm going to build this item. If it was an inventory part that we bought from a vendor, we may choose to put in a vendor number and a vendor part number, and of course a purchase cost. So the purchase cost, as I said, would not be updated, and the selling price, we'll go in and we'll put in a selling price of $10. Actually, let's be a little bit more generous. We'll use $100. Then down here we have our inventory item general ledger codes. We have our cost of sales, inventory, sales account number. So because this is a finished good, I'm going to change this item code, and I'm going to try to find a finished goods inventory. We're going to use that because when we're going to build it, we want to place it there. Everything else we'll do for the sake of this example. Down at the bottom, we do have an analysis code. This is AKA a category code, and I'm going to pop that list open. This is a user-defined list that you build on your own. You can see I have several different items here. I'm just going to choose the analysis code M, and this is going to help for reporting if I want to see histories or sales histories on certain analysis codes. I can filter my reports that way. I'm going to leave the taxable settings turned on. I don't think they're really going to come up in our example. We have user-defined fields before I go to the right side at the bottom, and there is 4 alphanumeric, 3 numeric, 3 date. These are fields that you can custom label on your own, and depending on my screen resolution, I might be able to fit the other tab, which allows me to display all the EDI fields. Now, if you use EDI, or if you engage us to help you use EDI, I should say, because it can be a little bit of a complicated process, you may need many of these fields. If you don't use EDI, you can label these fields whatever you want and use them as custom pieces of data. So they're data that can be searched on in item lookups, they can be dropped on your forms, they can be exported. So there's all sorts of custom fields that you can set up for an inventory item. If I resize my window back, that tab goes back up to here. So that just shows at the bottom based on the size of your screen resolution. On the right side, we have a bin location. I'll just put the letter A here. Lead time, that would be for purchasing. If you purchase the product and you put in a lead time, then it will default an expected date on that product. Minimums, reorders. I'm going to put a minimum quantity of 10. Reorder, because this is a manufactured item, we're not going to have a reorder point. And then of course we have weight, so that's per 1 unit of product, and with that we will sum the weight on any orders or purchase orders. And then down here we have 2 UPC fields, because the UPC may be required for purchasing or selling cross-border. You may need to include that information on your forms as it's sent there. So that's essentially the setup of an item. Now we do have just quickly for other examples that we're not going to talk about, we do have a vendors tab. So we do support multiple vendors, vendor part numbers, and vendor costs. The price matrix tab I will talk about in a minute, as well as the bill of materials. We do have what's called item alerts. If you enter an alert here in these fields, for example, in the purchase order or the sales order, whatever text you enter there, when that item is selected on a order, so if I was to put customer alert, that will pop up a message that the user has to at least click OK to. So it's a way to communicate a special piece of data about an item to the person who's entering an order, and it will only appear when they select that item for either a sales order or a purchase order. And then we have, of course, the user defined fields, which we already spoke about. So to complete this, I'm going to save the item, and then we're going to get to the next step, which is establishing a bill of materials. So to do that, I'm going to click on the bill of materials tab. Connected supports two methods of bill of materials. The first one is, so I'm going to click modify, and I could put sample info here. The first one is just a straight bill of materials, where what that means is you're going to list the amount of components that it takes to make a single good of the item. The second is what's called a batch. A batch manufacturer is where you always produce the same quantity. For example, a barrel or a vat or a container full of liquid. It's always the same amount, but you want to list the components that it takes to go in there, because you don't just make one, you make 100 every time. So that's a batch. It seems to come up mostly when we talk about liquids or something that has to go in a container. That seems to be where it fits the most, and you basically say it takes this much inventory to make 100, for example. And each time you manufacture, you can't change the quantity you're manufacturing, because it's always going to equal 100. In my example, I'm going to use just a straight bill of materials. I'm going to go down, I'm going to press tab. That's going to generate my inventory list. The inventory list has two panes. The first one is the item number, and the second one is the description. The default sort is by item, so if I start typing, I will get to that spot on the list. So if I go S2, it will go down to that area on the list. Or I could sort by description and do the same thing. The other pane in the inventory list, which is present all the time, whether I'm doing a manufacturer, I'm doing order entry, purchasing, it's always going to be visible in the list, and that's called the advanced lookup. So for example, if I want to say all items that contain A in the item code, I can hit search and I will get 3. Now while we're here, this list or this lookup supports multi-tiered queries. So I could go in and say item descriptions that contain or begin with, or I could do all sorts of other filters. A very common one is I'm doing a purchase order and I want to see all items that I buy from this vendor, and then that will sort the list. You can change the columns. I have several columns here, but I could change those columns and pick the ones that I want to display in the list. Connected will always remember the way you left your advanced find. So when you come back to the system, whether you quit or not, the way you left it will be exactly the way it is. You can do a reset if you want, but for example, I could put the selling price, and if I wanted to reorder the columns, I hold my mouse button down, drag it up, and I could put it, insert it there. And if I hit change columns, then I get a different look on my list below. Whether you're in the advanced find or the quick find, if you highlight an item and click on the show quantities, you'll be able to see the item quantities in the portion below. So what's on purchase order, sales order, work order is to be manufactured, so a finished good. On hand, committed means inventory is locked, so it's locked but not posted or executed, and available is simply on hand, less committed. So you can see that in this sample data we have 2 locations that we're tracking inventory for. So that's how the list works, and now I'll just simply go back and I'll start assigning a few components. So in this sample data, it's been many years since the items have been updated, but it uses computer type items. although I'm going to build a lot controlled item, we're just going to assign the various components here. So I'm going to say that we need to build one of my manufactured item. We need one of these items. We're going to use two of these items. And then we'll use 1.25 of that item. And then I'm going to pick down here, I'm going to use a labor allocation for manufacturing. This item has a cost of $37.50 per unit of labor. And that's done through kind of a special setup in the inventory window where you basically set up a service item. You designate a cost of sales account, which might seem strange for a service item because there is no cost of sales, but the only purpose that account has is for manufacturing. And in my example, it will come out of direct labor. And then I have the current cost. So I'm going to say by default, we use 2 units of labor for each build. And then maybe I'll just add one more item and I'll just do a quantity of 1. So you can see as we're adding items, Connected does have 6 decimals of precision if you need to go that far in your bill of materials or recipe, if you call it. If you want to reorder something, as in reorder the list the way that it appears, I click on it and I just click the down arrow or the up arrow. So these are very subtle, but if you want it to display a certain way when you actually execute the manufacturing, that's how it's going to work. I'm going to hit save, and that's going to save my bill of materials. So for the next part of this example, we're going to focus, before we actually do the manufacturing, we're going to focus on pricing of inventory, because that's a tab that we didn't speak about when we're doing the setup, but it's also got many other areas that we can look at aside from just the inventory, because it has multiple ways to be priced. So we'll just focus on this area here, and that's the selling price. And by default, that would always be your highest price, and you would base discounts from that price. So there's 3 ways that Connected can do pricing, with the exception of editing lines or discounting within an entry. The first is called customer specific pricing. The second is called a custom price table. And the third is a price matrix. So I'm going to show the first one, and I'm going to exit this screen to show that example and move to the receivables. I'm going to find a customer. I'm going to open the customer screen, click find, press tab, and I'm going to choose a customer for my list. Again, just while we're here, just like inventory, customers have a quick find and an advanced find. So you could do the same sort of thing that I did before, and searching by phone number, email, some sort of character might be helpful for large customer lists. I'm going to bring up a customer. I'm not going to worry about the other tabs in this screen today, but I'm going to focus on the item info. So this is a customer price list. This has got, in this case, it's got an item, their part number, and just the list price. So this model is using the customer price list not for pricing, but for customer part numbers. If I hit modify and I change and I put this price in here, 1500, and I can also have an effective date and an expiry date if I choose to. I'm going to leave those blank. Then essentially I have put the first level of discount. So if a part is listed in the customer item info and that part has a unit price, no matter what other discount, quantity discount, or anything that's specified, this will supersede and always be used. So essentially you can have a specific price list per customer. I can click the plus sign down here, and what I'll do is I'll add our item to this, and I'll just call it customer number 12, and I'll put in the sample description. These can be that I should point out that the customer number can be a form field, which means it can either A, replace your own item number in a form like an invoice or a purchase order, or it could be in conjunction. You could have 2 separate columns, your part number, our part number. You could do that sort of thing. The list price is 1,000, And I'm going to put in their price as $899, and then we'll press tab. So that's how we define a customer price list. Just while we're on the topic, although it does kind of get off the beaten path from today's presentation, we can import customer item info. So you can import that as well as many other pieces of data and define your customers, their pricing, etc. So that can be done that way. Now, before we move off of the customer pricing, there's one very important side effect, if you will, that comes from customer pricing, and that is when we're doing data entry. So if I open the sales order screen, click add, press tab, and I will pick my customer here, put in the date, the location, I'll put in a quantity of 2, tab. This is the inventory item list. So the first 2 tabs we've already seen because they're the same, my part list, my advanced find, which is, as you can see, is exactly where I left it. But the customer tab is now there. So what we also gain from using the customer item info is we gain a part list that is unique to that customer. So when we're doing data entry, we can avoid errors or view the relevant information for that customer. This is very good for companies that have large part lists and they have a customer that buys maybe 5 parts, or they have negotiated contracts where they have a price that is effective for a year and then it changes. So that's the kind of the last area of that. I won't continue with adding the order here. I'll cancel because it's really not part of this presentation, but that just kind of explains the first level of discounting for the parts. Now, to explain the next level, or the in order, so the customer is the highest, or the first level we look at. And the second we look at is what's called a custom price table. So a custom price table is a code that you give a code in a description, and then you create a list of parts and their price. So for this example, I may want to add the new inventory part that I just added to my list. I could click plus, I could add that item, and I could put in whatever price I want. I'll do $9.75. And basically what happens with this price list is that it is assigned to a customer or a group of customers. So unlike the customer price list where we assign it to one customer only, because that's all we can do, this could be assigned to a whole group of customers, like the manufacturers, the distributors versus the retail customers, for example. You can establish layers or waves of pricing using this. And this again can also be imported and import updated. So you can hold a price list external and easily update many price tables, thousands of parts at once if you need to. So this is the key difference here. It's a one-to-many. It can be one-to-one. You could certainly use this to have a price list for every customer, but that would kind of contradict something that's already there to do that same thing. So it's kind of a one-to-many, and this price table is assigned in the customer's window. I'll show you where that's assigned after I show the final area of discount. So, and that is back in the inventory window, and I'll click find and I'll press tab, and I will locate my item number and I will click on price matrix. So the third area, or if none of the other two are in use and this area is in use, that you can assign pricing is through our pricing matrix. So this is kind of like a table where we have quantity discounts and price levels on the side. So if I was to make some changes here, I could say you buy 1 to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, and then I'll say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll hit recalculate. And this is going to do a straight quantity matrix. I could then choose to piggyback that, or I don't have to use that option. I could keep this just one column, and I could piggyback that and say if you're price level 2, well, you get 2%, you get 4%, 5, 6, 7, 8, and again recalculate. These values are assigned to the customer, the pricing level. So again, this is a one to many. One would always be the highest price. So this cell here, the $1,000, is always going to be the highest or the list price, and everything kind of goes and discounts from there, and this being the lowest down here. So this is assigned to a customer. Now, you could do a recalculation, or I've definitely seen some customers kind of cherry pick their pricing where they have a level here where they just put in 200 or 100, and they basically put in very custom pricing, because maybe the other two pricing models that we've shown are useful, but this is simple enough that it can apply to all their customers. This can be imported as well, but another benefit of the pricing matrix is we have a global recalculation. So you can do very fast recalculations, change your prices for all items or filter the items, and you can base it on the purchase cost or the selling price. So if you took your selling price and you wanted to increase it by 10%, you would say selling price 1.10. You would choose what you wanted to recalculate, and then you could proceed with the recalculation, and it would increase everything, for example. And that's how the price matrix works. And if I go back to the customer screen and I click on the details tab here, so this is the account tech customer and the sample data, this is where the data is assigned. So if I hit modify, here's the price level, that's the price matrix, here's the pricing code. So there's only one in my sample data, but you can see how it's set up and defined. Now, as I've been moving along and connected, I'm opening and closing windows, and I do this often out of habit because I'm just so used to getting around. But something that may be useful for users is to show our recent places sidebar, which if I do, will start tracking the screens that I've been in, and it will start tracking every time I drill into something, every time I click on a hyperlink and that sort of thing. It will start adding that to my recent places. So for example, I'll click find, I'll open up the item that I was using, and I'm going to pin it here, and then that's going to show in my recent places at the top always, and you can see the last two places that I just clicked. But as you move through connected, as you click on links that open screens that are related, or you drill into items, we will always trace where you were. It will always be on the left side, and you can always pin an entry which would tag it to remember it. You could choose to have this on all the time by just changing a preference, and then that bar will always be shown by default. I usually have mine off, but from what I've seen from practical use of connected, it's probably 50-50 where the users will have it on all the time. And most new users that we see are using it on all the time because it's very handy to pin those entries and to track the recent places. So that's just a little bit on that. So we've covered off the customer specific pricing. And what I'm going to do is follow this by moving into an example of manufacturing inventory and customizing my bill of materials, and then I'm going to finish up with kind of talking about lot control and how that fits into connected. Now, before I do the actual manufacture, there's a couple of ways that we can set up a request to manufacture in connected. The first is we could go to the manufacturer screen, open it, click add, and tell connected that I would like to build something. So for example, I open the manufacturer window, I click add, I'd say I'd like to build whichever part. Whenever you do an add here, will only show you parts that can be manufactured. So I could pick that part and start the manufacture process. The other way that you can do the same thing is you can go to the accounts receivable, and you may take an order for a customer. For example, let's see if we have one already here. Usually there's something in the sample data. Here's 2 items or 1 item, but you can go to the sales order depending on your process, whether you build to stock or build because a customer creates an order. And you can say action, create a work order. A work order is a request to manufacture. So the word work order and manufacture are synonymous and connected. In some cases, it sounds better to say work order because you're going to build something. In some cases, it's listed as manufacture, but it is exactly the same term for the same use. So if I click create work order, I'll get a couple of different criterias. I'm not going to build this item, but just to show you how the relationship can exist, I'll just say for all back ordered items, I'll hit OK. There's 2 items on this order that could be built, these 2, and then those items will be listed on a tab on the right. I could see that it's already been done previously, so I already created work orders on this some time ago, but you can see that there's now a relationship to the customer's order, so the person who looks at the order can always drill in and see where the work order is or what's the status of the work order or that sort of thing. So that's how that works. I will do the example for manufacturer by going to the manufacturer screen and just doing the add, but now we understand that we can do a relationship from the work order. So to do this, I will click add. We will pick the sample item. We have our description here, which defaults. I can change it to whatever I need to. I'm going to put in a manufacturer quantity of 5. I'm going to press tab, go through, and as soon as I pass the shift field, my bill of materials will be built. So this is the bill of materials, which is quantity of 5 times the default bill of materials that I set up in the inventory screen. So we can see that the items are listed. I have an entry date, a required date, which I could change, and then maybe I could change the schedule date to the day before, depending on how you do the manufacture. You could do that sort of thing. And I can hit save and leave it exactly the way it is. So this is now set up as to be manufactured. I can go and I can easily find this in a work orders ledger, work orders or manufacturer, if you will, just to continue to use both terms. But if I sort by item, I can see it here, or if I sort by date, I could see it right here and here. Sorry, because I made those other ones. So it's right nested in that date. There's other filters that you can do, the required date. You could do a location if you have multiple locations, that sort of thing. But this is basically a list by default of all the open unmanufactured. If I wanted to see everything, I could certainly do that as well and get a list of everything. My sample data doesn't have much, but I could have a view like that. And again, this type of window allows us to customize the columns. So we have all these custom or fields that we can use. So each user can have their own display here and customize the columns for what is meaningful to them. We have order ledgers for customer orders, for customer quotes, a quote ledger, and also for purchase orders. So we have the same sort of quick list type window that you can customize the view, and it's very useful for all those things. So I'm just pointing that out because it's exactly the same interface. So if I drill into my item, it opens up the manufacturer screen. In this screen, if we look at the body, we have our components. And we have a column for suggested, we have a column for actual, and we have a column for committed. So suggested is what the bill of materials told me I should be using. So let's edit the manufacturer. So first of all, when we look at the manufacturer screen, we can add components on the fly, and we can edit components or delete them. This is done through user privilege. So you can grant user privilege to edit components or block it so that it's fixed. You can let user privilege allow you to change the manufacturer quantities or not. So in looking at the first line, I can go in and I can change the actual quantity. It told me I needed 5. I broke one in the process. So really it's going to take 6 units to make this manufacture, or for whatever reason. And I'm going to commit 6 units of inventory. I'm going to hit save. So now what I've done is I haven't built the item, but I've committed inventory to it already. So it's got allocated inventory that cannot be used anywhere else. Before I continue, I should point out that the manufacturer screen also prints a form that is very handy to email or to print for production staff, depending on if they have access to the system or not. Very common for this to be the form that is sent to the back, if you will. But you can print the form. This is a customizable form, just like an invoice. You can edit the columns. You can put all sorts of different text and make it. I've seen some that are quite detailed. And basically, this is a form that is the work order or the manufacturer form to help with the production. So that's how that works. And you can email it to internal users of the system, not external, by using the contacts feature. These are all users of the system or of Connected that we've defined in this file. So I could hit send to and attach a PDF of the work order and compose an email that will open up my email application and send a copy of that to that person. So before I continue with the actual manufacturer, there's a couple of other subtleties here. We do have a whole bunch of custom fields, I believe 15 or maybe 20, I'm not sure, I'd have to count them, but you can again label these as you need to and put in your information. These fields can be searched. They can be listed on your work order form for manufacturer. We have a large area for comments. This can be set up by default in the bill of materials. This can also print on your work order form or be used to add comments. And if I hit save, we also have, which is in every screen, our notes. You can add notes. You can also link files to the notes. And it's a shame, but I didn't enable that feature for this presentation. But basically, you can link any file of any type. We have a tech note on our support site. It's very easily found. Just search linking files to notes, and you can see exactly how it works. But you can link files, maybe a blueprint, a purchase order, whatever that may be that is relevant to the manufacturer process. You can do that as well. You can also create purchase orders. So you could create purchase orders based on this manufacturer and buy the materials that you need. Usually it's based on a shortage. So an ideal scenario would be commit your inventory, see if you have any shortages, and then you could generate a PO or purchase orders for that amount. So if I do that, it's going to generate purchase orders and it's going to nest those POs here. Those POs will have a work order number. So I'll just do a quick purchase order. I'll say for all shortage quantities, fill now. It's going to fill these items. I'm going to take off, I'm going to exclude service and get rid of that. I should have done that at the start because we don't order that. And I'm going to click OK. 2 purchase orders were created. Down here, I can see them, and this is by item. So there's 2 POs. This is the same purchase order number. And if I drill into that PO, we can see the purchase order, which is not something I'm going to cover in today's presentation. But what I just want to show is that we do have the link to the manufacturer. That link field is interesting. If you do add a purchase order or you repurpose a purchase order, if you will, you can edit that field and link it to another work order or manufacturer entry. So you can edit that and repurpose the link if you need to. But right now, if I click on that, I'm linked back to that manufacturer entry. So to finish this process, I'll click modify. We already talked about adjusting. I changed the actual quantity. I'm going to go down and say that my labor here was not 10. We used 12. So I'm increasing an intangible cost because that's what happened. We'll commit 12. And then I'm going to just basically go commit all and get my shortages to 0. Now, before I can build this entry, there's 2 things that have to happen. Number 1, I have to approve it. So I'm going to check that off. You can't build it unless it's approved. Connected can auto approve entries. If that doesn't mean anything in your company model, we will approve those entries for you, and it's essentially meaningless at that point, I guess. Well, not meaningless, but you may unapprove them, I guess, but it just removes a layer of control so you can have that convenience. And then the other key thing is this is a lot controlled item. So if I was to try to manufacture this, it's going to say, sorry, you need a lot number. And lot numbers can be assigned in two ways. The first one is we can auto number them, and a lot of companies will choose to do that because it's just a matter of having a lot number and an expiry date. Or you could place your own lot number there. There's a lot of text. So what I'm going to do is make my lot number nice and easy so I can find it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll put the letter A at the end. And I could put, I believe it's a 20 character field. The expiration date is when does this item expire? It's not a mandatory field because it in some cases it's not required, but I'm going to put in 12/31/20, and then we're going to hit save. So this item is now ready to be manufactured. I'm going to hit the post button, which is going to execute the build on this date that is here, and maybe I want to date it in the future because of the dates that I'm using here. But essentially, that's the date that all the inventory is going to be withdrawn from the components and put into the finished good. I'll hit review. We'll get a warning. This is the quantities that are going to be used. This is the finished goods lot number and expiry date. This is the distribution. So we have inventory accounts, 2 of them. Then we have the direct labor account. And then we have the finished good cost for 5. We hit proceed, and the manufacture is now complete. We get a transaction number that's showing the withdrawal of inventory, and we can view that if we need to. But if I click on my item here and go back to the original screen where we set up the inventory item, and I click on this location, movement, I can see the manufacturer. So this is now in. The per unit cost is $278. If I click the cost layers, which is where we would normally show just FIFO cost layers, but in this case, this is a lot controlled item. So it really is specific costing because you can pull exactly the lot number that you need. And that's where that exists right here. So that's essentially how we manufacture, how we customize the bill of materials and print a work order form. I should point out you can print item labels in the manufacturer screen, so you can print your own identification labels and you can affix those to your products. That's a very commonly used feature as well. They can be small labels, full page labels, but the idea being is it's for a label printer. So to finish the inventory example, we're going to talk about lot control. Now what I'm going to do to make this a little quicker is just to demonstrate how that works is I'm going to quickly set up I'm going to receive some inventory. So this is a miscellaneous receiving of inventory. This might be how you establish an opening inventory account for lot controlled items. So we'll leave the comments blank. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show more items on hand with different lot numbers so that you can see how they're depleted and how the selection process works. So I'm going to say a quantity of 20. I'm going to use a unit cost of $288. Before I hit save, if I do try to hit save, Connected is going to tell me you can't move or bring in inventory that's a lot controlled without telling me what the lot numbers are. So every time we're moving inventory around with lots or serial numbers, we must identify what those are. So it's controlled. We click, there's the item. I'm going to put in some different lot numbers, 4567-B. I'll do 123119, and I'll say 7, and then I'll do 7891-C, and I'll go 123121, and I'll do 13. So that's 2 different lots for the quantity, 13 and 7. We hit save, and we'll post this from here, and that will enter those into our inventory, and then I'll be able to do a sales example on the way out quickly. So basically, there's the items. We're posting them. They come in. And again, might be how you establish your opening inventory. For those accountants out there, you would probably have your GL turned off when you do that, so there wouldn't be a journal entry created. That would be a normal way to establish opening inventory balances. If I go back to my item, and I don't have to click find, I can just click the pin. And if I go back to the cost layers here, we can see that I have got different costs. That last receiving was the same, but I have different lot numbers. So essentially, to show how this works, I'm just going to do a quick invoice. Actually, I'll do an order and I'll do the order process. It won't take long. We'll click add. We'll pick our customer that we've been using the whole time, or referenced. I'll do a quantity of 3. Press tab. We'll go to the customer item info. We'll pick. There's the alert that I set up in the item screen for sales orders. In this case, I have the customer's item number printing in the body of the description. We can see the price is auto-filled, and I'm going to ship the inventory. I'll hit ship now, tab through. The price and discount fields, these fields can be blocked off in that they can be made display only. So if you set up pricing that you do not want users to edit while they're doing data entry, you can make these fields grayed out so they're visible, but they cannot be edited. That does 2 things. It speeds up data entry because it's 2 less tab stops, and it also keeps the data integrity in the pricing. You can choose to have both off or one or the other, so you can have any combination. We tab through, we'll save the line, and I'm going to get a couple messages here. The first one is a PO is required, so this customer forces a PO number. If I was to hit save again, it's going to say, you got to tell me the lot number, because I've put a committed ship quantity into this field. If I didn't put a ship quantity, I wouldn't be asked for the lot number. For the sake of time, I'm just going to assign that now. We'll click here. And then this is really what I wanted to get at, is that we have the inventory on hand. We have 25 units, 3 different lot numbers. If I wanted to, although this would be a little out of the ordinary, I could pick 1 from this, 1 from this, and 1 from this. So I can choose, hand pick exactly the inventory that's going to go with the order. So a great example is if you manufacture something for a customer specifically, and it's lot controlled, sometimes it doesn't even have to be lot controlled to use this to gain this advantage. When you manufacture it, you may have manufactured a batch or a group of items for somebody else at a similar time before you ship the order. But because of that lot control, you're able to pick the exact inventory with the exact cost that goes with the order. So it really allows accurate tracking. I'm going to click save, and I'm going to finish the order. There's a lot of other things that go on in the order screen, but for today's scope, we're not going to get into those. So I just want to point that out. There's a lot of other things that I could be showing here. To finish this, we're going to go action, quick ship. Now I have it selected to print a packing slip by default. I could choose to print an invoice, I could shipping label, etc. I can pick the forms that I want to be generated. But for right now, I'll just do the packing slip. It's the most logical one. I'll ship the order. This is the packing slip. So again, this is a customizable form, but the key pieces of data here for lot control is I'm showing all 3 lot numbers, the quantity and the expiry date. So this is going to the customer. The customer will identify that, and that's, in my experience, exactly what they need to see usually is those lot numbers so they can verify the incoming quantities by the lot numbers. I'm going to hit close here, and now the shipment is nested against the order. I can drill in. This is an invoice. This invoice is unposted, so I could still edit it. So if for whatever reason I decided that the initial shipment or the data was incorrect, I still have one chance before it's posted to go and edit it. So at this point I can go and say, you know what, it's going to be 2 of the, or I'll take 1 off, and then I'll put 2 of this. So now I've reshuffled my allocation, which will reshuffle the costing as well in this case, and I'll hit save. The accounting is listed over here, so it's very transparent. We can see all the general ledger accounting that's going to happen. And then of course, if I post the invoice, we'll have a distribution for this invoice, we'll have if there was more than one, we would have a net distribution for all. Of course, that's the same as the first tab. And then of course, we always will show you the outgoing lot numbers, or if it was a PO in, the incoming lot numbers. So that sort of thing. And then I'll hit proceed, and that entry is now done. And then when we talk about the word traceability, although I'm showing a small example, what it basically means is that we need to be able to, on whether it's a mock recall, we're being inspected, we need to inspect our processes, or we have an inspector coming to our site, all these sorts of things, or we're being audited for our procedures and our manufacturing, whether a distribution or a manufacturer, I should say. We would go to the inventory and basically find our number, or our lots. How would we do a recall? So we go here, we click find, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's not the number because that's not the one I was using. I don't know what the number is now, but let me just find it. Maybe it's the next one. We have a whole bunch of serial numbers in here. There it is. So bad choice for me and not knowing my data. I should have finished it, but this is the number that we originally did. So what we're going to show here is the manufacturer. So I can drill in. There's the actual build and the sales. So if there was 10 customers that received it, everybody would be listed here. If there was a credit memo that came back, it would show a plus back in. If it was a component, I could drill into the component and see it, or if it was a PO in, I could see the vendor that I received it from. The whole idea is that there's a web of traceability, but essentially the number one thing we need to do is, if there is something that was identified as spoiled, bad, or for whatever reason dangerous, maybe everybody can think of examples of food recalls. That's the easiest thing that would come to someone's mind, but it's the same for any product. If there is a recall, it is your duty to your customers to be able to notify them. So rather than using a spreadsheet and trying to track this stuff externally, Connected's going to track it all for you, and it's just going to be tracked through the entries that you're doing. And that's the example of lot control. Now, things that we didn't cover that could relate to that are within a manufacturer entry. You could have components that could be lot controlled, and I would have to commit the lot and serial numbers into the build. I could also do a purchase order and receive in lots or serial numbers, the same thing. So it all has waves and layers that go through, and once again, help with the traceability. So that is going to end the product demonstration for today on our chat about inventory control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close Connected, and I'm just going to basically take any questions that anybody has from the webinar. It's a lot of stuff we cover. We do other webinars that are general if you're more interested in learning some general information about Connected. This is a pretty specific one about the inventory aspects, or some of them, because we certainly haven't covered them all. And what I'll do is I'll just close this down, and I'll go back to the PowerPoint. We'll just put up the questions and go from there. So if there is any questions, you can type them in the WebEx chat if you'd like to, and I will answer those. I have seen a couple pop up. So a couple of the questions that we did have were good questions, and again, we could just go on and on with inventory, so we try to cover as specific topics because this would take so long to do everything. The question is about barcoding and how we do that. Well, barcodes in Connected, or for Connected's purpose, are just a font. So a barcode can be used in many different ways. You can scan items with it's like a keyboard, if you will. But as far as Connected's concerned, a barcode is just a font. So if I was to print this and I was to make this font a barcode, well, then it would be a barcode. And we have customers that will do that, or they'll scan the work order number, or they will make these barcodes, or they'll put in the body of their sales orders barcodes for their customers that receive it. Another common thing is we print our labels, and we put a barcode on those labels. I don't believe I set one up here, and I didn't, and this label is poorly configured because I changed the logo, but you could just make that a barcode field. We could print the item below the barcode. So all that sort of stuff is available in Connected, and it's a lot simpler than people think. It's really just a font. As far as scanning items in and out with barcodes, well, that can be a little bit different because it's really dependent on your process and what you want to do and how, of course, accurate your inventory is. So that one I would asterisk and say we always want to know a little bit more about what the goal is, and then we could tell you the solution that would work best, because we have a few of them, but different businesses have different models, and it's a matter of applying the practical solution that works. The other question that I had was about inventory counts and how is an inventory count done, and that's a good question. So an inventory count is done two ways when we're dealing with lot control. If you're doing lot inventory items, fortunately or unfortunately, those have to be adjusted manually. So when you're doing your year-end count, you have to go in and put in an adjustment and adjust the quantities manually for the lot numbers. We will provide a count sheet that shows the quantities, the lot numbers, the expiry dates, so you can insert in a spreadsheet or print it if you will and put those quantities in. But lot numbers have to be done manually. All other inventory can be done through direct import. So in the case of a non-lot item, you could say that we have on hand in the system 57, and when we import an inventory count, we say we counted 5. So that import would create a withdrawal for 2. We would check the import versus what Connected has, and through a comparison, we will either add inventory if that's what the import is telling us, or withdraw inventory. So that's a pretty standard process. We do have some documentation under the help menu on that. But once again, with the complexities of lot numbers, we're not able to do an auto import. But if you're not using lot control, or if you want to isolate the items that are not controlled, you certainly can do that, and it's pretty easy to do in Connected. So I don't think that I'm not sure that there is any other questions that have come up. So what I'll do is we'll just thank everybody for joining us today. Again, it was a lot to discuss with the Connected with the inventory control. If you do have any other questions, you could certainly visit our website or contact me directly. You have my email address and contact information from the webinar invitation. And once again, we'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today. Hopefully this was informative. We do have a couple of other webinars that we're running. We do have a general webinar to get to know a little bit more about Connected. That's more broad and general about how Connected is working and some of the other aspects of it, as well as we have another one that's a little bit more specific, and that's about our Connected on Demand hosted option, which basically shows how the program can be deployed on a desktop or in a Connected on Demand environment, which is a hosted cloud environment. So once again, thanks very much for joining us today. Hopefully this was informative, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thank you.